You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. I understand the emotions that come with being overwhelmed by having too much going on and almost feeling like it would be easier to give up and do nothing because it feels like so much to get going. The more that you can stay rooted in something that is like the task that you can actually execute, the better it will be. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. I'm Felicia, and as usual, I'm coming to you. This time I'm recording on a Monday afternoon. It was a really nice weekend for me. This time of year, it's been a really interesting time of year because I guess there's a lot of reasons I'm kind of thinking about this, but I've noticed this huge kind of slowdown inside of myself this past week. And I don't know if it's just coming off of launching the website. I had so much momentum going forward in that. And then I just kind of, I don't want to say it burned myself out, but I think that I just kind of needed to replenish myself. And so I've been reading a lot. My sister got me into this drawing it's an app on the iPad called Procreate. And so I've been doing a lot of painting on the iPad, which is awesome because I have always loved art and it's been such a huge outlet for me. But it is pretty hard to like get all of the painting supplies out and then the cleanup and the canvases and then where are you going to put the things. And so it has been such a game changer to be able to do and express myself in that way on an iPad where I can just keep everything in a digital library. And that's been really great. So I've just been kind of focusing this last week on trying to get back to myself and trying to fill up that inner cup. And I find myself, honestly, this past week, just kind of the more I let myself sit and settle, the more sadness that has been coming up for me. I don't know if it's just because it's really feeling like it's been feeling like the longest winter ever. In fact, I was kind of like trying to jog my head back and I'm like, I don't even remember last year I don't remember feeling like there was summer. I don't remember feeling like there was even fall. I don't remember feeling those things that you normally reflect back on, like vacations or hanging out outside. Like for me, one of my all-time favorite things to do just would be like to go grab what I needed to do, some work, and go grab a coffee from a Starbucks and sit outside. And I haven't done that since, gosh, it's been a long time, like probably like a year and a half or so, because I think because of COVID. I mean, as we start to come up on this year anniversary coming up in 2.5, 3 weeks, it's really starting to hit me, the trauma of what's happened. And I know how lucky I am that I have been able to stay in my house, that I've been able to mostly afford we've been able to afford our bills. We've been able to make changes in our business. We've been able to grow our businesses this year. But it doesn't take back like all of the pain that all of us have felt, like this collective pain and this collective trauma. And the reason I use the word trauma is because we have been hurt by this. We have been impacted of, even being able to go see friends. Like when you think of needing to meet up with somebody, you think like, is there a way that we can meet up outside? At least that's still where I'm at. I've been noticing a lot more stuff on social media these days about people just, I don't know, doing all kinds of things, which is awesome. But I'm like, I had this moment where I was like, are we doing things again? Like, I just had this moment where I'm like, I'm really not. And there was parts of me, as I reflect back on this, that kind of enjoyed this time. It's like, I've been reading this book by Catherine May called Wintering. And she talks about, that there's a power in the process of going through kind of what you do during winter, that kind of when you go through difficult times, it is like wintering. Like wintering can become this verb for you to rest and retreat. And there's absolutely been elements of that in this past year. I think I've grown a lot. Like I'm not trying to diminish the positive parts of it, but I've just been reflecting on, I think there's been a lot of me that has pushed down or pushed away things that really fulfill me. Even being able to connect with my girlfriends in person or my friends or the yoga community. Oh my God, like my heart hurts so much when I think of it. And the amount of people who have reached out for me with that same longing, like for all of you inside the yoga community, I know you're missing it too. I know that there's no amount of online content that can replace what it feels like to walk through the doors of your home studio and practice amongst friends. And those friends aren't necessarily people that you even know, but they're people who you hold space with. You hold space for yourself alongside of them. And that is starting to hit me more and more. I don't know if I was just in denial or if I just, for self-perseverance, kind of pushed off the pain or just whatever it was. So there's been a lot of that kind of reckoning inside of myself right now. And I've been left with this question, which is, what do I need to do to recreate that sense of happiness right now? Like what is needed? And how can I really make that change, not just externally, not just with my mind, but from my gut, like from deep within? How can I have that conversation with myself right now around what do I actually need? And then working to actually give myself that. So I don't know if you guys can kind of relate to that as well. And I might talk a little bit more thoughtfully about that on another episode once it gets a little bit closer to that year mark. Oh boy, it really is crazy. It's been a crazy year, hasn't it? And you guys know me. I think it's really important to be honest. So I'm not going to sit here and try to sugarcoat anything. But I also don't want to revel in the pain of it too much. I want to be honest. I want to be authentic, but I don't want to just, I don't want to spread that to you guys, because there is so much for all of us that we can, if we just keep going, right? Like we can sit, we can rest, we can feel, we can cry, we can be angry, we can beat up the pillows on our bed, we can go for a run. Like we can absolutely find that release for all of that we're feeling. And it's so, so valid. But let's not get stuck in it forever, because there's so much more here. There's so much that we need to be able to move forward into. And the last thing I'll say on this is just, that reminder. I think whenever you start to feel like you're alone in this, just remember, like, you're not alone. Even the people who are projecting these certain images online, like, remember, we all have so much more depth to our emotions and our experiences. And just because somebody is a yoga teacher or a author or a high functioning business person, whoever, whatever you kind of associate with them that makes you think that they're not dealing with anxiety, dealing with the trauma of COVID, dealing with the loss, dealing with loss of connection, or even like a sense of depression. Like I think a lot of us are going through that and figuring it out for ourselves. Maybe some of us are maybe there's some, probably not people listening to this podcast. Maybe, I don't know. But I think there's a lot of people who are also avoiding their feelings, avoiding how the impact of it all. So if you're noticing that, just have a healthy amount of discretion with that, and remember, you're not alone. You are not alone. You're not the only person who is, watching way too much TV or spending too much time sitting or spending too much time on the news or, has gotten kind of their bad habits kind of, going. The reason I say that is because I think that this past year has almost been this huge excuse for so many of us to be like, well, I'll get back to it when things get back to normal. And you guys, it's been a year, and maybe it's not a matter of things going back to normal. Maybe it's a matter of us creating a new normal for ourselves. And I know like the term new normal it creates a very visceral response. So if you've just had that happen, I'm sorry. But what I mean by that is maybe it's time to start, like I said, about for myself, like starting to reckon what's happened within me, maybe for you to start saying, okay, what are things that I can start doing now? What do I need to be doing? I know for so many of us, like, I think not practicing yoga because we are trying to do it from home, or not going on that walk because it's been so cold outside, or not calling up that friend because, we for some reason are like not as much on the phone culture. Maybe you start to just say, what can I do? Maybe I'll go for a walk by myself. Like call my best friend. Maybe I will try to get that socialization and that need for exercise. Maybe I'm going to pick a new day of the week where I really do have, a couple hours where I can go grocery shop and do my meal prep all at once so that I can make healthier choices for myself. Obviously, I'm using a lot of context of things that I feel like I'm trying to do a little bit better on. In fact, as per usual, like my day kind of changed. I told Dave I wanted to do all of this podcast stuff in the morning, and instead, I found myself, we ended up at a grocery store this morning, and I spent the 2 hours once we got home just like meal prepping, like shredding chicken, making boiled eggs, cutting up all the vegetables, just because I'm feeling that really big need right now to make changes and to do them in a practical way. You guys know that about me. I am really big on like, you can make changes and you can want things, but you have to figure out a system that works for you. Like you have to work with the system. So that being said, today's episode, actually, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my philosophy behind systems and processes, and also just on like getting stuff moving, like getting stuff done. So that's going to be kind of a bit from within later today. But, let's go ahead and dive into the Astro check-in. So this is the last week of February. You guys, can you believe that? Next Monday will be March 1st. Wow. And we have a couple of things to note. One, over the weekend, Mercury went back forward. So it was in retrograde the past 3 weeks, and now it's station direct again. And oh my gosh, I was waiting for this. You guys, this has been the Mercury retrograde for me of things just disappearing. I noted this a couple podcasts ago, but I've had multiple things on the computer where I'm like, I know that this was there, and then it's just gone. Even this weekend, Dave and I were working on a video project, and I was doing some color correcting. And in the program that we use, essentially, like you color correct on a different layer. And so I was like, hey, like, babe, come here. I want to show you everything I did. And we're watching it, and half of it was just gone. Like half of the work that I did was just gone. So frustrating. Also, very Mercury retrograde thing. I have a really close friend who was supposed to close on her house last week. Yep, didn't close. That didn't happen. There was a problem with an inspection and things just not working. And that is just, there was a lot of examples of from all over. So if you guys had been feeling a lot of that kind of backtracking, things not working, being kind of forced to wait or redo by the universe or do it again. Hopefully we start to feel some more of this forward momentum. I'm starting to feel it a little bit. I think actually for this past Mercury retrograde, I felt like a lot of my guards up, and now I'm starting to kind of feel like I can slowly take those down a little bit, and feel like I'm ready to make some decisions here soon, which is always really good. Then also last week, the sun moved into Pisces. So I talked about this a little bit last week too, but now we have this new sun season in Pisces, and we've got this 12th house energy as well. So Pisces, and what's great about this is that we actually have this great opportunity to talk about Pisces sun in comparison with its sister sign, its opposite, which is Virgo, because on Saturday, the full moon, which is in the sign of Virgo, is going to be bright in the sky. So, you guys, we've talked about this many, many times, but during the full moon, there's opposition. And when signs oppose each other, there's a kind of correlation. They're kind of like sister signs in a way. They are opposite sides of the coin, kind of like yin and yang. And so as we talk about Pisces and kind of understand Pisces, we can do that in comparison to Virgo. So Pisces is a mutable sign. It's very, kind of ethereal, dreamy, emotional, a little bit more slow, a little bit more depth, kind of like that, dream quality that has just like a slow, kind of easy, even kind of romantic vibe to it. It's very sentimental. And it's a little bit more idealistic, which is kind of like that dreamy sense, right? It's like not really rooted in like what is rational or logical, but a little bit more of like what's ideal. What do we desire? What is beyond our comprehension in this world? That kind of vibration to it. And Virgo, on the other hand, is going to be a little bit more extremely rational, critical, adaptable, practical. It's going to get stuff done. It's going to have a plan. It's going to be organized. Pisces is not like that. Pisces does not have as many systems. It definitely is more like feelings based. So it's kind of nice maybe to understand it along that balance here. And I really do think that part of what happens during a full moon is rising to this moment. Like, right, we've been having to work with this new moon to build up this momentum to get to this peak moment. And as we start to near this full moon, this celebration of light, suddenly there comes all of this illumination. And with this illumination comes an opportunity to find balance, right? So it's like, oh, okay, from here where all of this light is shining down, we can see where we have missed opportunities. We can see where we've been kind of over-correcting ourselves or overshooting things. We've been missing other things. We can kind of just feel, or maybe we see like, everything is exactly how I wanted it to be. And now I can kind of bask in this moment of appreciation. So it gives us a really big moment to, I think, come into balance, which is part of the reason that opposition happens, where the sun and the moon are opposite of one another, and where we can find this month a balance between the parts of ourselves that are maybe overly watery, kind of getting lost in the flow and in the idealism, and the earthy part of us, that Virgo part that wants to get overly obsessed about doing things, getting things done, being super organized, being very rational. What's the balance between the two? And so this week, maybe notice the play between both of those signs leading up through, especially next weekend, Saturday and Sunday, the 27th and 28th of February. Maybe notice the places where, like, if you've been very rigid about certain things, that you can be a little bit more easygoing, a little bit more accepting, a little bit less stuck in your ways, demanding, trying to be a little bit more like go with the flow. And if you've been very dreamy and not putting anything into action and just living only in your mind and especially in your feelings, maybe you could back off of that a little bit and allow yourself to get a little bit more practical, a little bit more kind of into the system, into maybe being a little bit harder on I not say harder on yourself, but like harder on the issue at hand. And just see what finding that balance does to you. Because I think in general, while our bodies like to find balance and our emotions find balance one way or another, we in general do not like to find balance in our minds. We kind of tend to like what we like. But then once we do find and integrate good, healthy balance into our life, we actually start to flourish a lot more. So something definitely to consider with this upcoming full moon. And as of course, in the days leading up to the full moon, if you find yourself a little bit more restless, find either a creative or a physical outlet for that energy. So if you need to run or walk or create or read or write or, keep a notepad next to your bed. And when you can't sleep, just turn on that little nightlight and just let yourself get it out of your mind and onto the paper. Try not to resist any of the restlessness and instead channel it into something productive for you. That'd be my biggest take on that for you. All right, let's take a quick break. All right, so this next bit from within that I've been thinking about is kind of sharing some practical tips on how to get a lot done. And this is something that I think about often because I think when you're managing a lot of things, either in your household, in your job, in your emotional capacity, like we all are people that have a lot going on in one way or another. And it can be very hard for different people to find their self prioritizing the things that they actually need to do for them. And I think that there's kind of, this is kind of a not fully fleshed out system. Sorry, you guys you're getting the real Felicia here. But there's getting stuff done, which is like one skill. And then the second skill is being able to be a good prioritizer. And if you can have both of those things on board, then you are like extra super powerful. But if you can have one or the other and kind of play off of your strengths in that category, I think it really will continue to help you. So for me, I am a really good get stuff done kind of person, but I'm a terrible prioritizer. And the reason I say that is because I've talked about this before, I tend to think everything is a priority. And so everything is of the same level of importance. Now, there are people who are really good prioritizers who are able to recognize, hey, this is the most critical thing, this is the second most critical thing, and then these things, those come after. And they're able to kind of use that approach, which I think is very helpful because it probably creates less stress. So I'm going to talk about a system that can kind of help you use both just to get stuff done. But the first is the number one thing I tell people, my number one piece of advice when it comes to having a lot going on in your life. And I remember the first time that I shared this with somebody, it was when I was working retail, and one of my coworkers, he had just gotten a promotion where he was going to be working full-time somewhere else, and then he was going to be stepping down to part-time in the job that he was at and kind of juggling both worlds. And at that time, I was also working full-time job in retail and then also running my business full-time. And so I had to get very good at being able to manage many things at once, but also being able to compartmentalize. And he was like, how am I going to do it? Like, do you have any advice for me? And my number one piece of advice is don't think about getting something done, just get it done. And it kind of has a sister piece of advice, which is if you can get something done in 10 minutes, or if you can dedicate yourself to one task for 10 minutes, do it then. Because the reason why I say that is because a lot of people think that things are going to take a lot longer than they actually take. And if you can distill a single task or part of a task into something that you can do for 10 minutes, you can actually get a lot of stuff done. So let's picture this like, imagine like your bedroom as a teenager and how there would be like, just imagine things everywhere, right? Like you have all of your stuff everywhere. You've got cups from, however many weeks you've been bringing water into your room. You've got plates from late night stacks. You've got magazines and schoolwork and homework and things that you've collected, and everything is everywhere. And if you were to think like, oh my gosh, I've got to clean all this stuff up. It's going to take me an hour or longer. And then you're immediately overwhelmed by like where to begin, what to get done. But if you can just say, okay, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to just grab all of the trash and throw it away. Suddenly what you gave yourself 10 minutes for probably only took like 2 or 3 minutes. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to give myself the rest of this 10 minutes to just grab all of the glasses and bring them to the kitchen. Okay, well, now that part's done too. And then instead of thinking, okay, I've got to do all of this laundry, just break it into the task of like, okay, I'm going to put all of the laundry into a pile. Okay, now I'm going to take that pile to the laundry room and get all of the whites going or all of the towels. Okay, so then you just get that started and then you can come back. And so you just break it into one little thing at a time. And this is transformational. Like you can literally do this with anything from managing your household to working on your business, right? Like the more that you can stay rooted in something that is like the task that you can actually execute, the better it will be. So I use this even when it comes to like preparing for tax season, which is literally one of my least favorite things ever. But it's like, okay, I'm not going to go do all my taxes right now because that is going to make me run away from the room and not want to show up. But if I can just say, okay, all I'm going to do right now is scan my like forms onto my computer. Then, okay, oh, now that I've did that, okay, I'm going to drop them all into my tax folder. Okay, great. That's done. And I can stop there. If I need to stop there, at least I've gotten that amount done. But what usually happens for me is I'm like, oh, well, that wasn't that bad. So now, okay, now I'm going to see what I'm missing. I'm going to just start to grab that. And I'm like, okay, now I have to deal with my mileage. Okay, I'm going to go tackle that. And you just take one little thing at a time. And I think what happens for a lot of us is we just get so overwhelmed. And I totally understand. I've lived with many people who are the overwhelmed type that just are like, no, I can't get to it. But if you just take it little by little, little by little, one goes far. And for me, I get a super huge, like tremendous amount of feeling of like personal power from being such an executor. Now, I really do wish I could improve that prioritization piece for me personally. And this kind of moves into like a second philosophy that you could choose, or you can kind of marry with the first system, which I find a little bit easier. But this has become very helpful for me. And that is just pick 5 things that you need to get done that day. And they can be really simple things. It could be like, I just need to get my bed made, because like once the bed is made, then I feel empowered to like have a fresh, clean room. I know I'm going to go to bed easier. It's going to make me easier to wind down. I just need to make my bed. Or it could be bigger things like I need to get the payroll done, or I need to get X project done. I need to write so-and-so back. I need to connect about this thing, or I need to arrange this thing. But in the morning, if you just write the like 5 most the things that if these things got done, that after that, like you could take the rest of the day, like kind of more chill. And then you just work down the list, like, okay, I'm going to get this thing done, and then this thing done, and this thing done. And what I love about this is that, one, it gives you total permission that if you execute those things, that you can let the rest go, which for me can be very important because, like I said, everything can become such a huge priority to me that I can really burn myself out. But the other reason that I love this is that it really can show us how much time we waste being overwhelmed, being busy, doing busy work, and being fake productive. And I think that we are all such time wasters when it comes to that. And I mean that with love. I think, though, that like when you spend an hour like like going back to the room analogy about cleaning your room, like there's other ways you can clean your room. Like you could start with one corner, and then with everything in that corner, like you're making a trip to the kitchen to put that glass away, and then you're coming back, and then you're making a small pile with laundry on that side, and then you're going over to your bed, and then you're like, this thing is on my nightstand, like, I need to reorganize this jewelry. So then you reorganize that, and then there's another glass, and then you bring that one back to the kitchen. And that, if you approach your room that way, like that could take a really long time, because not only are you distracted, but you're not conquering like tasks, if that makes sense. You're redoing the actions that you've already done over and over and over. And so what I like about the prioritization and the other method of just kind of being laser focused, giving yourself these small bite-sized pieces, is that you start to realize that things don't take as long as you think they do. One of the things that Dave and I have really bonded over and shared in common that we really have implemented in our household is like do you guys know, like when you're spending a lot of time at home, you feel like all you freaking do is clean the kitchen. Am I right? It's like you make a meal or breakfast, and then you clean the kitchen, and then somebody has a snack, and then there's cups here, and then like, this cup's from last night, and then there's like it's just like never ending. And we definitely experience this, but we really like to try to go to bed with the kitchen totally cleaned. And that means like, from the dishes that we hand wash, that we like dry them off, put them away, like counters are cleaned up, floor is swept. Like we try to, the majority of the week, go to bed with the kitchen really clean. And if it's not, then we tend to the next morning get up together and just tackle it together. And what's nice about tackling the kitchen with somebody else is that it takes even less time. And honestly, like the majority of the time, he and I can like deep clean the entire kitchen within 10, 15 minutes. And what feels like takes forever and is really draining can actually become very empowering and a really big tool for efficiency in your life. And we've tried to implement that in other places too, like especially now that Dave is full time, we're kind of figuring out new systems of how we're going to approach this together, and how to make even more space for the video side of things, how we need to grow that side of our brand and put more effort into it, and carve out a space for him. And so we've been kind of going through like our vision, our ideal client, all of these things. And these can be very overwhelming. Like it is just pretty intense, pretty heavy. But what we've been doing is just taking it in like 10-15-minute chunks. Like, okay, let's just get our ideal keywords out. Okay, great. Do we need to take a break? No, let's keep going. Okay, go to the, who is our ideal client? Kind of start to write that stuff down. Okay, now do we need a break? Okay, yes. And then we come back to it the next day. Okay, are we ready to tackle the vision statement? And it's so nice. And I was just telling him, I'm like, wouldn't it be great if we could approach the other hard things in our life like this, like the budget. My next project is the budget. But like even today, like I told you, we went to the grocery store this morning, and then I spent like the next hour and a half after that meal prepping. And I'm glad I put all of that work in, because hopefully it will really help us this week. But I definitely spent a long time doing many different things. But the majority of the time, what I was working with this idea of like, okay, what do I just need to get done next? So instead of having everything everywhere, it was like, okay, I need to get all of our salad into bags to store it better. Okay, well, is that going to take me, probably 10 minutes? Okay, well, I'm going to get eggs boiling, because I know I'm also going to wash the strawberries and chop those up. So now I do have 3 things going, but they're all things that if at the end of getting those 3 things done, I can put the rest of it away and walk away, then I can. But so I just kind of took it a little bit by little bit, kind of also measuring my energy. And then I also knew when I started to get to that point where I'm like, okay, my hips are starting to hurt a little bit. My body's feeling fatigued. I'm feeling a little worn out from standing in this kitchen doing all this shit. So you have to give yourself permission with all of these tasks, to know when you're going to get tired and fatigued, because, we've all been trained with this idea that we are meant to work like these 9 to 5 hours. And the truth is, like, we're not efficient people like that. Like, we need to work in rhythms and cycles. We need to work in bite-sized chunks. And we're not meant to go for 7 or 8 hours, especially on the same task or in the same thing. Like, we need to execute in different ways. And so my biggest thing, you guys always know this, is I'm like, work for who you are. Like, know yourself, know what works for you. And make who you are, make that the system that works for you, right? Like, you have to play to your strengths. And so often we've been taught to act outside of ourselves or do things like somebody else does, or, all of that. And that couldn't be more harmful. Like, we have to know who we are as individuals. We have to know the things that are going to speak to us, the things that are going to resonate with us, and things that are going to make sense to us. Because if we're constantly doing things that don't make sense to us, we should stop doing them, right? I don't know. I feel really, really strongly about that too. So anyway, you guys, that's my take on it. And as a Virgo rising, it probably feels a little contrite to say all of that, because I love organization. I love getting stuff done in that way, and it feels very practical and useful for me. But I'm also a Cancer, and I've got that kind of watery side to me too. And I understand the emotions that come with being overwhelmed by having too much going on, and almost feeling like it would be easier to give up and do nothing because it feels like so much to get going. And that's why I want to share this, is just because I think whether you are working your way out of depression, or you're working your way back into a yoga practice, or back into any kind of physical release with your body, like any kind of fit. I don't want to even use terms like fitness or health, just honestly like movement practices for well-being. That's what I feel like they are. It can be very overwhelming. It can be overwhelming to get yourself even reckoning with the impact that this past year has had on you, maybe even working from home, or the way that, things have impacted your family or your relationships. But just take it one little thing at a time. And even if you just did one little thing a day, like, that's going to add up, right? 1 10-minute thing a day means 70 minutes worth of stuff in a week. And we so need to give more credit to the small, little intangible things that really make a big difference for each of us. So, all right, you guys, that's it. I'm going to grab my I don't know why I always call this self-affirmators. It's not self-affirmators. It's just called affirmators. Affirmators, Love and Relationships deck. And we're going to give it a little shuffle here and pick a card that hopefully can serve each of us today. So today's card is Open-Heartedness. I know that life and the people living in it can be an absolute bummer sometimes, but I promise not to let unhappy chapters make me jaded. If I let negative experiences turn me sour, then the jerks win. So I'll move on with an open and hopeful heart, if only because I hate losing to jerks. It's a little funny, but also almost made me tear up there just a little bit with promising not to let unhappy chapters leave me jaded. It really ties into how I was feeling at the beginning, just kind of sitting with all of this unhappiness and sadness from this past year. Even thinking there's so much to that I said, maybe we'll talk about some other day. But I love that it's the perfect wording. Like, I'm not going to let those unhappy chapters make me jaded. Yeah, I'm going to be thinking a lot about that as we come up on this year mark. How can we move on with an open and hopeful heart? How can we stay connected to that sense of hopefulness? And hopefully everything that, kind of shared these bits from within today can help us move to those places where we feel capable and open and hopeful. All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening today. Please, if you haven't had a chance to share the podcast or to leave a comment or even check out the new website, the abitfromwithin.com, or even the Patreon, I would really, really love if you just checked it out. See if there's anything there that would be of service to you. I am going to be releasing the new full moon guide for Moon in Virgo, Sun in Pisces coming up at the end of this month. And then, of course, it will also have a new month guide worksheet. So if you really love that kind of self-work, definitely check it out. That will be through Patreon. So you can get that for the $6 a month meditation level, or you can become a yoga member, $12 a month, get unlimited access to all of the yoga classes, the gentle yoga classes that I do. And there's a new one each week. And we just released part 4 of the self-love for meditation series. So this whole month, there was one for each week. So if you are working on love for yourself, check out that series. It's kind of meant to have one per week. So starting with self-acceptance with week 1, and then working all the way up to radiating love outward. So check it out. Lots of great and fun work happening with A Bit From Within, and I'm just so grateful for all of your support and for your listening. Thanks, and have a great week.